Today, I'm going to talk about ways to climb. Wait, wait, I will just change the title because, yeah, okay, starting now. Hello, everybody. Today, I want to discuss what are the kind of mental things that will help you climb and that sort of come naturally to some people, and to other people you have to sort of learn is not quite the right word, but adjust. And um, and I'll sort of break these into categories, but within each category there are sort of what you might call specific tips. So I think one of the main things that goes on with people who are, say, hard stuck is boredom. They don't really they don't really connect to the game, and a lot of the time they spend there actually searching for some sort of connection, some sort of action, and this leads them to do things that are, you know, looking for the action, right? Rather than, you know, uh, if you're not bored, well, you're gonna do things sort of the right way, and you're gonna connect to the game at the right time, and you're going to play the game in a very emotionally regulated way. And so for the first thing I'm going to say is energy uh, slash boredom. So what really is boredom, right? Boredom is the sense that there isn't really any meaning, right? Contrast this with anxiety, right? A lot of people, probably this is less true at a higher level, are going to have anxiety where they simply, as a result of not knowing what things mean, they are looking, um, they're kind of freaking out, searching for the meaning. And boredom is a little bit different, but similar in that there's this search for meaning. And so most people don't have much anxiety because they kind of know a little bit of what things mean, but boredom and anxiety kind of go hand in hand, I think. Um, and so anxiety is best helped by analysis, right? Because ultimately, this is a game, there are very fixed meanings, and so analysis will lead you towards the meaning, right? Boredom is a different question. So with boredom, there is not just a confusion, but an annihilation of meaning. And oftentimes, these both result a um, in a sort of um, unreasonable search for meaning. For meaning, oftentimes it looks like random fighting, bad communication with teammates, um, not seeing the win condition. Um, uh, and so we have a little bit of a analysis of a major issue for people, a major problem, right? There's this annihilation of anxiety. Let's look at like what exactly might cause this. So causes. So the obvious thing that comes to mind is an obsession over winning, losing. So the game ultimately um, involves winning or losing. It's a very important aspect of the game. The game would not be what it was if there was not winning and losing, if there was not LP involved. And in fact, these LP and interest in winning can be very good tools for somebody to find meaning, right? But it's important that that is done in a um, in a well-regulated way, right? So let me go over some of the causes first, and then maybe we can like identify some connections between these, right? So the first one is an obsession over winning and losing. The second one is things not going to plan. So a lot of different things can cause things not going to plan. So let's make that its own little category, sub thing. The first reason is you made a mistake. The second reason is your teammate made a mistake. And the third reason is your knowledge of the game has gaps. And this is ultimately your knowledge of the game having gaps is a great way, a great starting point to improve as a player, right? When you start to feel bored and you can identify that you're um, you don't understand how the game works, right? You don't understand, for instance, what a champion does. You don't understand their cooldowns. You don't understand why your teammate played the fight a certain way because you weren't aware that you should be thinking about something, right? That you weren't. Say your teammate was under threat, you didn't recognize that threat, and so you made a certain decision that was wrong, right? And if you can look at that and say, okay, I I didn't understand this, now I understand this. This is a great way to cure your own boredom, right? And in fact, these two things can be transformed into this. So if you made a mistake or your teammate made a mistake, oftentimes something wrong happens because you aren't aware that that mistake can be made, right? It's worth turning, certain mistakes that people make into new scenarios where you have to develop a new strategy, right? And once you can recognize that it's a possibility that your teammate can make a certain mistake, then you know what to do, right? For instance, your a gang started, and your Thresh flayed nothing, didn't save it for the right moment, and then the enemy got away. It may be possible that a new situation arises as a result of this, right? Now you might have the choice, let's say you're the jungler, to keep pursuing that gank or not, right? And it might be that because you were not aware that your teammate could make that mistake, now you don't know what to do and you just keep doing what you were going to do even though the play failed and sort of failed from the start, right? Certain failures require that you recognize them and then react accordingly. And so even though you can think, yeah, the play was fucked up, you should develop a sense that actually that mistake was very possible, was always possible, and um, and now you will do the right thing, which is end the play, do something better, right? So that was getting into the real solutions. Now, let me try and link back into the overall sort of idea of boredom and anxiety. So, let me try and identify one more sort of cause. So, things not going to plan is a cause about how to make a play, right? This sense of joint strategy. You and your team come together to make a plan. This is a sort of very individualistic sort of what am I playing this game for, right? And um, the more you are playing it for LP, the more this stuff is difficult to look at. This stuff can often hide under this stuff. You, I think everybody can have an emotional sort of setback over this stuff, but the more obsessed you are over LP, the more this stuff is um, difficult to sort of trace. Um, and okay, so an obsession over winning and losing, things not going to plan, and okay, next, a interpersonal conflict. Um, people acting like pigs. So, oftentimes this kind of thing ruins the whole thing because the sort of natural basis of everything in the game is winning and losing, which is different from how I'm using it here, which is more LP oriented, right? The game isn't fun because you gain LP. The game is fun because you won, right? That there's a psychological process going on where you are stimulating your mind and solving problems, identifying problems, um, rooting out the evil, bringing in the camaraderie, the teamwork, right? And all of that stuff is the the basis for the whole game, right? And this obsession about winning and losing, this um, interpersonal conflict, actually attack things at the root, right? There's this psychological process going on while you're playing the game, and then when you literally cannot do the things that your mind is trying to do when it wants to play the game, well, that that can cause some irritation, some boredom, right? Some anxiety. And so you need to be able to react to these in a proper way, right? Um, okay, wait. Now let's go to like some solutions about how to solve boredom. So the first thing is to resolve the attacks on meaning, right? Um, that means that you're actively annihilating the meaning that the game should have, right? One of these things is to be obsessed with your LP, feeling like if you don't have a certain LP, then you shouldn't make plays or you shouldn't You don't deserve respect from your teammates, right? This is, you know, there are a lot of ways that people can annihilate the meaning of the game, right? Um, that that really means that people are should be playing together. They should be trying to find solutions together. They should be working towards some success. They should be defeating their opponents, right? And then when something steps in and a part of you doesn't want to do that, doesn't want to join your team, doesn't want to um, win really, uh, that's a point where the boredom will really set in, right? So you need to make sure that these points where you are annihilating meaning are restored to meaning. And with anxiety, it's a little bit different because you don't know how to make meaning, right? You're confused about the meaning. You don't know, um, how the game allows you to join your teammates. And that requires reflection of the game. That requires maybe certain setup changes. Maybe you need to feel like your character is more strong. Maybe you should play a different character that suits you better. Maybe you should um, adopt a certain habit of looking over your games and seeing where you made mistakes, seeing what your opponent saw. This might mean, you have some anxiety over playing with certain kinds of players, and maybe you need to look from their perspective. What is making them angry? What is making them fail? What is it that they expect from you and that they need from you and that you cannot provide, right? Obviously, this game has major flaws where certain things you play in certain situations are actually horrible, right? Like it's pretty the game is pretty bad if you really like playing a certain champion and it's just unplayable certain games, right? In that case, there isn't a very clear solution to how you should be playing the game. And it might require that you know, not play your favorite champion, which kind of sucks. So, yeah. All right. So, next. This is energy, boredom, and anxiety. Um, Next, we have in-game stuff. So the first thing I was thinking about is that that you shouldn't focus on everything. And this might sound rather paradoxical, but a lot of the times you're spending energy on stuff that doesn't really require you to have that sort of attention, right? And a lot of this has to do with your own ego, right? So a lot of the times you're thinking about whether you're doing things correctly, right? And you're obsessing over whether you're doing things correctly because you want to feel validated as a player, right? Whereas um, the correct play shouldn't derive from a sense of how things are done, but from a sense of actually winning, right? So this kind of diverged. This went in two directions. So ego. So th- there should really be the game should really play itself. And that's what I mean about you shouldn't focus on everything. Is for most of the game, you should have a sense of what you need to do as a team, how you need to play, and you should sort of be playing in harmony with this fundamental sense of the game. And when things go wrong, you should reflect on not what you did per se, but on what the fundamental understanding that you have, where that went wrong, right? The game should be sort of just unfolding as you expect it to, and you should sort of engage with that and watch that unfold and do everything as you wish, right? Have this sense that what you're doing is the way um, sort of beautiful. You should find the game itself sort of beautiful and you should engage with that. And rather than doing things the way they should be done, which is the egotistical stuff, where you're not doing things based on your understanding of the game, but rather you're doing things based on someone smarter than you, their understanding of the game. And the more you're doing things based on other people's understanding, the more you're going to fail because the more your attention is being dragged down by trying to understand how to adopt somebody else's methods without any real consideration for whether it fits you, whether it is actually, you know, linked to the sort of fundamental things about the game, right? The more you understand about, you know, that final goal of destroying the Nexus and everything that is connected to it, the more you're going to have energy and use your energy where it really is required, right? Putting energy on the high performance stuff. So, a lot of the times, if you don't have a very fundamental understanding of the game, you're going to be putting a lot of energy on trying to make sort of the right decision. And you're going to be constantly like trying to track, am I doing the right thing? Is my decision the right thing? But all that should sort of come naturally. And in between games, you can look at like, where did my understanding fall short? But the energy that you have shouldn't be devoted to making the genius idea. It should be devoted to the sort of high performance stuff like dodging abilities, you know, um, hitting, landing your own abilities, playing your champion to the maximum, right? Whereas the low energy stuff, right, the stuff that should just come naturally is just going on in the background, right? And that way you don't have to stretch your mind to make some really drastic change into how the game goes, right? The game's logic sort of unfolds and you're not necessarily reaching in to try and alter it because that requires a lot of energy that is really necessary for the high performance stuff. Um, and okay, I think I'll end the video there. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.